Dugouts, Dumbbells, and Dingers here as part of College Sports Now. We're back off of a week in Hoover, the SEC tournament, all the other conference tournaments. Everything has come to a conclusion. We have a bracket. We have a paper bracket. We have a digital bracket. We have 64 teams that are going to do battle starting on Friday with 16 regional sites. 5 of the top 8 national seeds are all in the SEC. The top 8 represented by the SEC and the ACC. And I think I had heard one nugget this morning listening to the D1 Baseball .com boys, Mark Etheridge. I think 32 of 34, the at-large bids, all represented by SEC, ACC, and Big 12. So Kahn and I will dive into that. The big guy is victorious again. A lot of smaller schools are held out. Some stunners around the country as the selection committee released those on Memorial Day. Again, remembering all those who serve, fought for our country this day after Memorial Day. Certainly not lost on us. The opportunities that we have, that we have each and every day to be with each other. And, you know, before we get into baseball, we actually lost a broadcast legend, a athletic specimen, a one-of-a-kind individual, and we thought this was pertinent, especially after consuming all the baseball this past weekend, to tip the cap to Mr. Bill Walton, who is as wacky and wonky of a broadcaster, phenomenal NBA player, phenomenal college athlete, coming out of UCLA and the Conference of Champions. And in a way, David Kahn, Kyle Schassburger, follow us at SportsCom4 at Kyle Schass. It's almost poetic that when the Pac-12, the Conference of Champions, had their last championship event that very same weekend, Arizona beat USC in the Pac-12 baseball conference title game, that we do lose when Bill Walton. So we say goodbye to the Pac-12, but we also say goodbye to Bill Walton. So it made me think. Really, this is all you. It didn't make me think. You asked me to think of maybe some off-the-wall wacky things as we brought you 17 games this past week as part of the SEC radio network out in Hoover. You know, what off-the-cup, what wild things that you couldn't plan for organically, just shoot from the hip type stuff, content that may have come on that is not baseball related because we like to have fun with it. And Bill Walton certainly was a man that had fun, at least it appeared to us. Every moment he was behind a microphone, every moment he wasn't. He was as real and genuine and authentic and unapologetic for who he was. Yeah, he was. And, you know, when I thought of Bill Walton, I thought of all of the random words he would find a way to incorporate into a broadcast. You know, obviously there were the antics. Like I remember eating a cupcake mid-broadcast with Dave Pasch was one that came to mind. But it was, for me, it was the verbiage that Bill Walton would somehow slip in. And would it make sense half the time? No, but it was Bill Walton, so it was great nonetheless. Which made me think, what was the most wild word that I inserted into the broadcast this past weekend? And for me, it was pretty obvious. It was the Yiddish word that I slipped in on Saturday that made Schass and our guy David Crane just lose it. Schwitzing is the word that I was able to get into the broadcast organically. Didn't plan on it, just kind of happened. We were discussing the weather when I was down on the field in the very hot Hoover heat. And I was dying. I was sweating. A lot of sunscreen, a lot of water consumed over the weekend, especially when we were roaming the sidelines, you and I. And I managed to work in the Yiddish word schwitzing into the broadcast. David Crane immediately collapsed in laughter. Couldn't get words out for a couple minutes. You refused to repeat the word that I said because you said that if you said it, you would say it wrong, as you often do, and you might lose your microphone. And understandable. I know what it sounds like, but schwitzing is just, you know, you're sweating. It's a Yiddish term, and I'm glad I was able to get it in the broadcast. The reactions from you two were hilarious, and yeah, that was definitely the most off the wall thing that I think I inserted into the broadcast this week for sure. I knew I couldn't regurgitate that word in any sort of way because, yes, I would have to turn in my microphone, much like a player would turn in his jersey to his coach in the coach's office. Like I think of the scene of Rudy when everybody was coming in and laying down their jerseys to get Rudy the opportunity, Rudy Rudiger, to be able to dress. One of the greatest movies of all time. Yes, it was fabricated from a sense of what actually happened, but still, you know, that's Hollywood, that's showbiz, that's cinema. It was scintillating. So, yeah, schwitzing. Yeah. That's it. I got it. There's less pressure on this stage as we are back in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in our Trade Street Showcase studios than there was in the scorching Hoover Met, which saw attendance records up the yin-yang, 180,000 plus, 185. I don't know. It was over 50. 180 plus. It was close to 16,000 people at the Hoover Met for the championship game, which you couldn't have scripted a better story with LSU making their run, the top seed Tennessee, the co-regular season champion, being there, going for their 5th title. Ultimately, they earned it 4-3 over LSU, but for an 11 seed, the lowest rated seed to ever make it to Championship Sunday, and the brand that is LSU, the defending national champs, back from the dead, 3-12 start in the SEC, finished 10-5, winning 4-5 series, win the elimination game on Tuesday over Georgia in the first game of the day. Don't know why Bulldogs fans even travel to Hoover anymore. They've now been bounced first game of the year, 3 consecutive years. But in a week where you saw an SEC tournament record, 46 home runs, shattering the previous record of 38, which was set back in Columbus, Georgia in 1997. The Hoover record was 36. You had the late game drama. You had Hoover Highsack. You had these phenomenal pitching performances, these shutdown moments. You had a green double base first bag. It was just, and this is all part of
Cole Messina.
And by the way, LSU overcame a 4-run deficit, 8-run deficit, and then nearly overcame a 4-1 deficit in the bottom of the 9th inning against Tennessee. It was just bonkers week in Hoover. And that's just one post, one pole position, if you will, across the country of all these corners and all these tournaments that were going on. Yes, we were dialed into what was going on at Hoover, and it certainly delivered and should be celebrated as we scrap the 12-team format. We move to all 16 teams. Everybody and their mother will be invited to Hoover in a single elimination format, with Texas and Oklahoma coming on down next week. Oklahoma is one of those top 16 seeds. We'll get into the bracket here. I do want to say, Kahn, and I know I need to give you my off-the-wall, baseball stuff. Let me just slip this in, because we are awaiting a care package of all care packages from a new partner with D3. Dugout, Dumbbells, and Dingers, presented by Baseball Barbecue, baseballbarbecue.com. We will be garnishing ourselves, our bodies, and cloaking ourselves in baseball barbecue gear. But it is what it sounds like. It's barbecue items more than anything, okay? It's patented baseball bat handle barbecue tools, licensed for the best teams in college baseball. Several of these being regional hosts as well. I think 6 of the schools are represented from what I saw this morning, at baseball_barbecue, at baseball barbecue, at baseball_barbecue. This is Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and then even on Twitter and X at baseball barbecue as well. But it's fun and functional. Baseball barbecue products are perfect for casual fans, serious grillers. Visit baseballbarbecue.com/CSN to find the perfect grilling gift for the college baseball fans in your life. And that will be live here by the end of today. You and I will have a care package. We'll start flexing our baseball barbecue muscles. I can't wait for that. But things that I said off the wall, I mean, what don't I say that is not off the wall? So, in a very Bill Walton-esque kind of way, your boy talked about everything from softball with his 8-year-old daughter to stimulating his body with endless amounts of energy shots, energy drinks, coffee, and the like. Subscribing to pain and suffering, and really throwing ultimate shade on many of the fans early in the week for not giving the incredible effort that I would expect when a foul ball comes in their vicinity, and people just kind of, spraying, just shooing, just avoiding that little white ball at every opportunity. But it did improve throughout the week, and I think I broke Gabe Genovese at one point. He could not stop laughing. So because I was giving them hell for not being able to, I was actually patting them on the back in some regards for the baseballs that are coming off at 100 miles per hour in exit velo, and trying to avoid those, or saying thankfully there was a net. But it was very contradicting at times. So yeah, Gabe couldn't handle it. So
yeah, well, the way you broke him is you were saying, I live my life like I seek out pain and suffering, like what you do, like you seek out pain and suffering to only improve yourself, better yourself up for the future. But then you also had previously just said that the #1 priority in life is to live a healthy life. And it broke me. I was just sitting in my bed laughing hysterically to nobody, because nobody was in the room, because you're broadcasting and we share a room together. And I hear Gabe just lose it in the middle of an at-bat that he's trying to call. And he couldn't go. He was out. Like, you guys missed like 4 pitches because Gabe couldn't talk. He
also became severely handicapped by my mimicking of one Cam Schuelke of Mississippi State, who,
oh my God,
this did not come to my attention at any point until I saw him come up in Hoover, and then I pulled up some of the notes that we had put together on him ahead of the week. So, like, really, genuinely, this was like as authentic of a reaction as you can have, because I was not aware that Cam Schuelke from Mississippi State can throw a baseball 9 different ways, and will do it 9 different ways in a single at-bat. So as he is breaking his own body, submarine, 3/4 from the ground, over top, like depends on the count, depends on the hitter, the moment, whatever. He came in relief. This is following the game that Gerangelo St. Just started. So not only did we have the ambidextrous pitcher who could throw with both arms, BHP, which is something I'd never seen on a roster card or a lineup card. And he only threw right-handed the entire time. So whatever. It worked for him. 10 Ks, 1 walk. He was solid. 6 innings. That was in the game against J.D. Thompson and Vanderbilt, if I recall correctly. And J.D. went 6 innings. So it all blurs together. Anyways, Schuelke comes out, and every time he's throwing the baseball, my body is also splintering because I am reacting and moving and grooving with every pitch. And this is Gabe's lead inning, and he's trying to call it, and he can't keep a straight face. At this point, it's, midnight, 11:30 Central Time. So appreciate all those that tuned in. Hopefully it was entertaining. We try to provide an entertaining, national unbiased product for the SEC, for national radio, for you. We understand so many might be tuned into the team-specific broadcasters, but we do it a little bit differently. It's a national broadcast. So big picture type items, how it pertains to the NCAA tournament, the SEC con, they did it. They did it. We called our shot last time we podcasted, the day before leaving for Hoover, 2 Sundays ago, 9 days ago. And the SEC did it. The exact scenario that needed to happen on Tuesday, with South Carolina beating Alabama, and then Vanderbilt with more urgency beating Florida, coming off a series where they won 2 out of 3 at Foley Field over Georgia. It happened. Those 2 won. And not only did just those 2 win, they then played in the semifinals on Saturday, playing for the second time after already delivering us an epic thriller on Thursday that saw Michael Braswell provide the go-ahead single in the top of the 9th inning. And then for LSU, the former Gamecock, he continues to torment South Carolina on Saturday in a game where LSU went down 8-0. They were down 5-1 in Thursday's game, came back to win 11-10. They were down 8-0 on Saturday. And this is just playing with the purple and gold sunshine elixir bottle, whatever it is that they had, this elixir that LSU had, the Magic, reared its head again on Saturday as they came back and won 12-11. In the bottom of the 10th inning, Stephen Milam, Monster Milam, he was born too hairy. I thought it wasn't hair on his head. I thought it was just hair on his body. He needed his first haircut when he came out of the womb. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is my favorite person in the world. But apparently he just had too much hair on his head. Yeah. Nonetheless, he was awesome all week. There were some freshman mistakes, but he had the 2-run homer in the 10th after a wild delay that featured a balking catcher's interference. I mean, Hoover gave us everything. And the double first base bag, we probably won't even have time to talk about because we have too many other things to get to.
We had one review, though. We did have it in the championship game. There was, with a first review all week, it waited until the championship game, and then we finally had one. And the ruling that we weren't sure about was if they touch both parts of the base, what's the call? And apparently the call is as long as you graze, you nudge, you just bristle the green bag, you're safe.
Yeah, so the double first base was you got to run through the green bag, on any plays made at first.
For the batter,
For the batter, hit the green bag. But where you can run into trouble is if they didn't hit the green bag and it appeared they hit the white bag, the defense, the other team can immediately challenge before they come back or tag them, and it will spark a review. So we had that one time, and that happened in the championship game. The call was confirmed because it did appear based on replay that the back right of the Tennessee Volunteers heel, and I can't remember who it was.
Billy Amick.
It was Billy Amick who had the 3-run homer in the 3rd inning that put them ahead 3-1. Eventually, they hung on 4-3. Jared Jones, by the way, hit a baseball in the 1st inning that is still traveling. It might be in Greenland at this point.
471.
But the other incidents with the green bag was on drop third strikes. If the ball bounced to the field of play inside, in fair territory between the lines.
I like territory. That's a great word.
Fair territory, yes. Yeah. The catcher would be yelling inside and making an inside throw to the back, as you would expect as you're watching a game. If the ball bounces away in foul ground down the first base side towards the dugout, the catcher most likely is going to be throwing outside the bag. So the fielder would then straddle the green base, and the runner has got to adapt on the fly to hit which bag that the fielder is not occupying. We didn't have any instances of trouble because I was very curious how that would play out. But that didn't happen. We had the one review. The green bag was fine. It wasn't an eyesore. It was comfortable. It was experimental basis. It was green. It wasn't orange because Commissioner Greg Sankey said in the booth with us after you interviewed Jay Johnson after the 2-run home run that ended it where LSU beat South Carolina and all the pandemonium and chaos that was ensuing. He's like, yeah, it was either orange or green. And based on the team that's about to take the field in Tennessee, like I think we made the right call on green. It was neutral among all the SEC teams. So it made sense.
Yes. No, that was a great explanation by the commissioner. Always appreciate Greg Sankey coming on, joining us, the SEC Radio Network, by the way. Thank you to Herb Vincent as well for setting that up. But yeah, no, the green bag was fine. We were curious what would happen because of it. We only had the one review, and there was never a drop third strike where the batter had to go to the inside part of the bag. So I'm hesitant to say it worked because there was no collision to the bag, so I guess that safety concern worked. But we haven't seen the questionable situation yet. So until I can see a questionable situation, I'm hesitant to say 100% I'm all in on board. But for the main purpose of player safety, yes, it worked.
Yeah, and who's to say even without the green bag if we would have had any collisions anyways, But there wasn't any sort of doomsday scenarios. We just had the one interesting moment in the championship game. And I thought initially it was going to favor LSU, but once you saw it slow down, it did appear the back of the heel. You couldn't overturn it at that point. And I don't believe there were any overturned rulings at all week. The SEC does a great job of being efficient with those reviews in Birmingham. Yeah. And I think they really make a concerted effort to protect the calls on the field and their umpires. They trust them. And they're really, I don't want to say afraid, but concerned with setting a precedent of starting to overturn too much. And then you're splitting hair. Do we have one, you believe?
I think Tim and I had one. I believe it was Thursday in the day session. There was actually 2 challenges, one by either team. And I think there was a play at second and a play at first. And they challenged that the shortstop never touched the bag at second. So the runner should be safe at second, but then they called the runner safe at first, and the other team challenged that call. And they ended up but they originally called the runner at second out. And I think because the video replay showed he never touched second. So I think they overturned that one call to say runner is safe at second, and then confirmed the other one that he was safe at first.
Okay.
So I think that was the only overturn but it was obvious. Like one replay and I was like, he's safe. Like it was blatant. So unless it's blatant, yeah, I think they're trying to stick with the call on the field.
So with the bracket, 64 teams, 11 of them are SEC teams. That's a new conference record for any single league putting teams into the tournament. We get this scenario, as I already laid out. Alabama sneaks in. You could say sneaks.
I think they deserve it.
I think the series wins over Arkansas and Texas A&M was enough. They did enough. And the other team being Florida, just a game, finished just a game over 500. But it was enough. We're going to see Cags again. And we're going to see Cags at O'Brien Stadium against Oklahoma State.
Oh, baby.
We might as well rename it Cags Stadium. Because it's going to become a Cags box of epic proportions. I think he's going to take full advantage of the setup there in Stillwater, Oklahoma State.
They only got one game of him and Condon. That's it. Didn't even homer. What the hell? Come on.
And it took him to the end of the week for Christian Moore to start to really turn it on. He had a ball into center field at 440 that I think was inaccurate. But, okay, so ECU is hosting. ECU somehow they sneak into the hosting picture.
Yeah.
Swept by Tulane 2 weeks ago. Take care of Rice. Go to Clearwater. I see the Tulane logo on your polo. I know you're very excited. Back to back for the Green Wave. Tulane is going where? Where are they at?
Tulane is going to Corvallis with Nichols. Oh my God. They are the highest rated 4 seed, but they cannot go to ECU because they're in the same conference. So again, another reason ECU screwing everything up.
Tulane and Corvallis, UC Irvine the 2, Nichols the 3, the Wave are the 4. They're paired with Kentucky. Who is the number 2? Tennessee's the number 1 overall seed. No surprise. Sweeping the regular season in the tournament championship. I mean, their credentials are just off the chart. They're paired up with the Greenville Regional. So Tennessee will have Southern Miss, which is super intriguing as the 2. Indiana's the 3. Norse is the 4. But for ECU, They get the 16. They're hosting. I think they wish they weren't hosting after getting paired up now with Knoxville and then also seeing who's in the regional with 2-seed Wake Forest coming to Clark LeClaire. Agree?
Totally agree. That's a tough regional. And don't count out VCU and don't count out Evansville. Evansville, who takes Indiana State basically out of the hosting field by winning the MVC tournament, because Indiana State had all the RPI, we had the metrics. We had Mitch Hanna's on a few weeks back talking about how great this team was. They still haven't lost an MVC series, since the War of 1812. But they don't win the MVC tournament, and I think that's the reason Indiana State's not hosting. We can talk about hosting whatever, but yeah, ECU. I mean, if you're the 16 seed, you're going to get the supposedly toughest regional draw. You're supposed to get the toughest 2 seed, which is Wake Forest. VCU and Evansville winners. Yeah, that's a tough draw right there. I don't think it's the toughest draw, in my opinion, regional wise, but it's a very, very competitive draw. And ECU, if you win, you're probably going to Knoxville to face the juggernaut Tennessee Volunteers. So I don't see a path for East Carolina to the College World Series anymore, I'm sorry to say.
You and I will spend more time drilling down on the regional matchups more later in the week, Thursday, when we get you another pod ahead of regional play starting on Friday. The schedule, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, if necessary for all of these. Weather will likely play a factor in many of these sites and move some things around. But, the plan is to play baseball up to 7 games per regional if necessary in total. Okay, this is a double elimination format across the 16 pods and the 16 regional sites, all ranked 1 through 16. The plan is to get all the baseball in between the start of Friday around 11 o'clock Central, 12 noon, and very late on Monday. In fact, Kahn and I will do our best to help keep you abreast on everything going on, because we are going to debut a new regional rundown show, the NCAA Regional Rundown. This is on the Varsity Network app. It's stream only. I know if you're listening to us, you have the Varsity Network app. If you don't, shame on you, and I will meet you in a dark alley. I will meet you in a dark alley at a later time, okay? And we can link up.
Show you how to download it, and we'll show you how to download it in the dark alley.
Yeah, give me your phone in a dark alley, and then say your last words, okay? But the Varsity Network app beginning on Friday. What we are going to do is take your squeeze play that everyone is jumping for joy over each and every week. You take that squeeze play, and you know what you do? You enlarge it, okay? And you kick it to the curb, okay? And you light it aflame. You pour gasoline over it, and you throw a book of matches in there, and you just watch it combust. And while you're doing that, you take the Varsity Network app, you link it to your favorite Bluetooth speaker. You say, hey, Alexa, you grab your Sony, your boombox. Speaking of boomboxes, LSU has one of the more impressive boomboxes that we saw. And you turn us up, because what we're going to be doing is providing live listen-ins, okay, to all of these broadcasts going on around the country at different times. Kahn, I, Gabe Genovese, Dave Coors, Paul Roper will all be part of this coverage and helping to keep it between the lines for you in focus as we drop in, similar to NFL Red Zone and what you saw on TV with Squeeze Play. We're going to give you the broadcast drop-ins and help to paint the picture for you throughout the weekend. So it should be absolute amazing cinema. Kahn and I will be working very hard on all of this this week to try and get it together to bring to you. But back to Knoxville. Don't count out Southern Miss, though. I mean, they win the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt was ravaged by weather this past week. Just an hour and a half southeast of us in Montgomery, Alabama. Hoover, fortunately, bless you. Thank you. Amazing weather all week. Okay? Chef's kiss. Just amazing. But our friends with the Sun Belt didn't have the same experience as they had an incredible amount of delays, especially on Saturday. But Southern Miss comes out of that. They knock off Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern was almost a bid sealer, and we had plenty of those. You noted Evansville coming out of the Valley, causing Indiana State not to get a hosting position. But Southern Miss can pitch well. It's a veteran team. And it's a rematch of what we had in a super regional in Hattiesburg a year ago when Tennessee dropped game 1 to Southern Miss, came back, won the next 2, then went to Omaha before ultimately not being able to make any sort of run, losing to LSU twice. But they're the number 1 overall seed. So ECU has certainly a significant challenge with Wake Forest as the number 1 rated 2 coming to Greenville. And good on Cliff Godwin. Maybe his lobbying, his tweeting, he pulled out, friend of the program, Cliff Godwin, pulled out a little notepad, and wrote down all the credentials. Some of them were kind of questionable in terms of like your road record and league record. Like the league is what it is. However, you know, you do have an RPI that, let's see what they finished at.
22.
RPI at 22, and your non-con strength of schedule fell to 12 because of all the games in Clearwater this past week. So,
strength of schedule overall 74, 5-2 in Q1 were the metrics for ECU. 29th in the KPI, which the committee definitely used this week, because I wrote down all the KPIs for these questionable teams hosting and then last 4 in, first 4 out.
Give it to me.
They absolutely used the KPI. I can tell you, they didn't say it, but they used it. Oh boy.
Okay, so who are our last 4 in and our first 4 out?
Okay, so let me make sure I have this correct. Last 4 in NCAA Baseball Field of 60. Let me make sure I actually have this correct. I thought I wrote it down and I didn't, and I apologize for that, for leading you into that.
No, that's okay. Charleston was among the first 4 out, and I know that's a big.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. The last Charleston, TCU, Cal, and Troy, and I believe the last 4 in were Coastal, JMU, Florida, and Georgia Tech. I think that's right, but I'm trying to confirm that. Like I'm almost positive I got that right, but I want to make absolutely sure. So let me confirm that really quickly for you.
Well, let me
while you do that,
let me talk about Duke, because I've gotten a lot of messages from Duke people here in the last day of why aren't they hosting after they kicked the crap out of Florida State to win the ACC tournament championship. 16-4 was the final. And Duke, who was a top 5 team for a lot of the year early on, they really stumbled. They really backslid at the end of the year. Now, they turned it on in Charlotte. But the question is, you know, why are they not hosting, and why is ECU hosting? So, for one, they lost 3 consecutive series to close the year. They lost their final regular season series. On top of that, what's most important, if you're looking at them and like NC State, who's hosting, and ECU, I get it, they're at 22, but Duke's non-conference strength of schedule absolutely killed them.
Yep.
So NC State's non-con strength of schedule was 34. So if we're going to take 2 ACC teams, NC State is hosting, Duke is not. State's non-con out of conference 34. Duke's 229. 229. So not only is State better in the RPI, which we're using as a key, measuring point here, 2 spots better, but a 3 strength of schedule overall in Duke's 22, in the non-con 34 to 229. Duke might have 4 more quad 1 wins and 2 fewer losses. Both have 3 losses against quad 3 and quad 4. However, the strength of schedule, enough said. Look at the disparity there from 34 to 229.
Yeah.
And what's more, the head-to-head, it's 2-2. Duke beat them one time in Charlotte, dropped the series during the regular season. But here's the thing. While Duke was losing 3 straight series to end the year, State won 5. And then you throw in Florida State, which is sandwiched in the middle of it. They only played 2 games, and they split because of weather. And NC State swept Wake Forest to end the year before going to Charlotte. So, it was a much more emphatic finish when you take those numbers, those metrics into account.
But Duke won the ACC tournament.
But you can only put so much value on that, right? That's what we try. Yes. I don't know what that value is. I don't know what that value is. I would have been fine in making Duke a regional host. I would have understood it. I would have understood. But I can just as easily understand why they're not, because of the non-conference strength of schedule, because you don't want to completely diminish everything in the regular season by what is going on in the conference tournament.
Totally agree. Here's the thing. ECU has them in the non-conference strength of schedule, 12. But Duke has them in the RPI. Duke has them in the overall strength of schedule. Duke won their conference tournament. Duke went 13-12 in quad 1. And Duke is 15 points better in the KPI. 14 versus 29. In the DSR, 12 versus 27. The only metric that ECU is better than in is non-conference strength of schedule. The only one. So, like, yes, do you want to take the regular season into account? Absolutely. Well, guess what? Duke played in the second best conference in the country, according to Warren Nolan's RPI. American 12th. And Duke did very well, and they won the conference tournament in the second best conference in the country. You do have to factor that in as well, in my opinion. The only metric that ECU is better than them in is non-conference strength of schedule. And I'm going to say it because it's true. It's very nice to have somebody representing your university on the committee. And ECU does.
One of, 4, 5 teams around the bubble with a big say. Coastal Carolina gets in because their AD is the committee chair in Matt Hogue.
Yep.
Indiana.
Kansas State, Florida, Indiana.
Kansas State, Florida all had committee representation as well. Take what you want with that. I make the state to Duke comparison just because the Duke people are automatically saying, well, why State get to? Because they're looking at their own conference. They're looking at their own conference comrades, but really the conversation, the argument for Duke should be with ECU. Because Duke, not only everything you just laid out and what I previously stated, Duke beat them head-to-head.
Yeah,
2 weeks, 3 weeks
that too.
ago.
That too.
You know?
Yeah.
So I understand the gripe for the Blue Devils. I do, but I also understand why they're not, because that non-conference strength of schedule at 229, there is no – so here's the thing. There's not even a team close to having a non-conference strength of schedule as worse as Duke. So we're talking lower half, 170 plus, except the SEC champion who swept both awards, regular season and tournament championship, in Tennessee at 172.
Yeah.
Okay. Among the top 67 RPI teams. So you can go 1 through 67, you'll hit Lamar. And then that non-conference strength schedule is bad, but even that, they beat Oklahoma. But Tennessee, the number 1 RPI team, has 172 non-con strength of schedule. Between 1 and 67, besides Tennessee and Lamar, it's Duke in there at 270, at
229. Yeah,
229. It's not even close, man.
Georgia Tech is the closest among the field of 64 teams at 220, and they were the last team in.
And so the moral of the story is, like, if you aren't making the effort to put together a better schedule, I guess this should provide some further motivation for you in creating a schedule. Like, hey, wow, I guess it really was that bad. You know, like, we need to at least make a better effort. But the catch-22 of this is you don't know how good and how bad the teams are that you're playing until you play them and get in the year.
Yes, and that's why the DSR is important and should be adopted, which is why I pointed out Duke's DSR better than ECU by 15. However, we talked about the fact that I say the committee used KPI. Well, what I just gave you showed they didn't use KPI. They used the non-conference strength schedule. Let's talk top 8. Let's talk Georgia and Oklahoma. And by the way, I want to preface the Duke-ECU conversation. I guess I can't preface it because we already talked about it, but I want to preface that, and I want to preface this Georgia-Oklahoma discussion we're about to have. Georgia and Oklahoma are both deserving of a top 8 seed. Duke and ECU are both deserving of hosting. They have the resumes. I think Duke is more deserving than ECU, as do I think you, Shass. But this is not to discount the season ECU had. I think they're deserving of hosting. Just like I think Georgia is deserving of a top 8 national seed, I think Oklahoma is more deserving of a top 8 national seed. And I think that was the biggest screw of the entire field, is Georgia getting a top 8 seed over Oklahoma. Oklahoma wins the Big 12 regular season, 15 RPI, 7 strength of schedule, number 5 non-con strength of schedule. So if we're looking at the non-conference strength of schedule, Oklahoma is one of the best. KPI, though, 13. Let's look at Georgia. Georgia's RPI is 6, so better than Oklahoma. Strength of schedule, 11, worse than Oklahoma. Non-conference strength of schedule, which we just mentioned, was used to determine that Duke would not host, 94. Remember, Oklahoma's is 5. Let's look at Q1. Oklahoma, 10-6. Georgia, 13-10. Wash. But let's look at the KPI. Georgia, 6. Oklahoma 13. So they switched the determining metric of what they're going to use. They went RPI, KPI to put Georgia in over Oklahoma versus what they did with Duke and ECU, which is where they took the non-conference strength of schedule and said, that's so bad that we can't overlook that. But in my opinion, 5 versus 94, that's just as bad. Like,
well, not to mention, how about we zero in on what they did during their own respective conference seasons? And I understand SEC, Big 12, okay, but still,
Big 12's third in the conference RPI.
This goes in the conversation of what value are we putting on the regular season and the conference tournament. Well, this is a perfect example to be able to create the narrative and skew the numbers appropriately as they suggest, with non-con strength of schedule, but also your record in the league. And what Oklahoma did, they won the Big 12 regular season for the first time in school history.
And they made the championship game of their tournament. Georgia went one and done again. Like, how can you discount the fact that Oklahoma was one game away from doing what Tennessee did and sweeping outright, by the way? Tennessee was a co-regular season champion, outright winning the Big 12, running away, and then almost winning the Big 12 tournament, which I get it. You can't put too much weight on the conference tournament. I understand. But still, when Oklahoma consistently hits these marks over Georgia, and it's not like they're in the West Coast Conference, which is the 16th rated RPI conference. They're number 3. The numbers are there. And then Oklahoma gets a horrendously tough draw in Norman. UConn, Duke, and Oral Roberts? I mean, come on. Like, wow. Holy smokes.
Death, taxes, and Oral Roberts coming out of the Summit League. Here we are again.
I feel Oklahoma got really screwed by not being a top 8 and by getting an extremely tough draw as the number 9 overall seed.
When Georgia lost Tuesday at LSU and Hoover, I don't think it crossed anybody's mind, unless you're a Georgia Bulldog person. You're on that team, you're a broadcaster, you're a staff member, you're a university person, administrator, coach, whatever. Unless you're directly connected to Georgia, I don't know if anybody outside the Georgia program, after they lost on Tuesday, thought that they were still in contention for a top 8 national seed.
Not a thought. Not even a second did I consider that. Nope. Never. I thought it was completely over. If they beat LSU, yes, I think that would have solidified it. But the way they laid down and basically submitted to LSU, it was like, all right, they know they're hosting a regional. They don't care if they're a top 8. It's fine. Whatever. They're good. And then losing 2 out of 3 at home to Florida the week prior. Yeah.
It's like,
we're talking about the way you end the season. NC State, the way they ended the season versus Duke, the way they ended the season. NC State was better. Oklahoma ended the season better than Georgia.
Do you think Oklahoma is paying for the sins of that series loss against Lamar? Because you look at quad 3 and quad 4, they're 14 and 7 in quad 3 or worse. 14 and 7.
No, Georgia. Because Lamar had a good season.
Yeah, Georgia RPI 67. Georgia 17 and 2, just 2 losses, quad 3 and quad 4 combined.
Yeah.
Versus for Oklahoma, they got the 7 total. So maybe that weighed on the committee's. You got to think it had some factor. The fact that you bumped them down to 9 and still gave Georgia a national seed. I'm with you, man. I agree.
Georgia was 7. Georgia's not even 8. They were 7. They jumped Florida State too, who made the title game of the ACC tournament. Like, when I saw Georgia 7, I was like, what? I thought maybe Georgia would get 8, but I thought it would be Oklahoma 7, Georgia 8, and then Florida State 9. Never in my mind did I think it would be Georgia 7, Florida State 8, Oklahoma 9. That stunned me. So it is what it is.
So Georgia is the 7
in this field.
Yeah, they've got Georgia at 7, paired with Raleigh, which is NC State at 10. So we've kind of danced around all of these. Let me just rattle through real quick to just reset. So Knoxville and Greenville 1 and 16. Okay, they're paired up together. The number 2 overall seed is Kentucky. The Lexington region is paired with Corvallis. Oregon State is the 15. Texas A&M is your 3 in College Station. They're paired up against Santa Barbara. They're the 14. North Carolina, the 4 out of Chapel Hill. They're grouped with Tucson and Arizona at 13. I want to come back to that one in a moment. Fayetteville, the 5 seed. Arkansas, hosting for the 6th time. I think it's 6 in the last 7 years. Either 6 and 7 or 5 of 6. Back at home, I think they got an absolute cakewalk. Okay, the 5 seed.
Who is this?
Arkansas.
Which seed?
Louisiana Tech, Kansas State, and Southeast Missouri State. Kansas State got spurned a year ago. Remember how vocal the head coach was? They get in this year.
Remember,
they're paired up with Charlottesville. So Arkansas and 12-seeded Virginia, 5-12. Then you have Clemson, the 6 seed. Clemson Regional mirroring Stillwater, Oklahoma State at the 11. You've discussed them already. Athens, 7 to Georgia, Raleigh, NC State, the 10. They're grouped together. Could get a potential super between Georgia and NC State. You could get a Georgia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks are going to the Raleigh Regional. James Madison somehow snuck into Raleigh. I'm not necessarily high on their credentials of being a Sunbelt at-large selection. But then you got Tallahassee, the 8 seed, and Oklahoma, the 9. That's Tallahassee and Norman.
Non-conference strength of schedule for JMU, 4. Again,
they went to Arkansas to open the year.
They keep switching which metrics they're using. The committee is changing the narrative every time they're picking someone, being like, oh, we want to. It almost seems like, and I don't know if this is the case, but this is what it reads like to me. It's almost like they have teams they prefer, they want to get in, or they have committee members that say, I want my team in, even though they say they're not in the room when they're voting. Whatever. Okay. Thanks, Matt Hogue. JMU. It's like they wanted JMU to get in, so they looked for a metric that they could back them up with and say, okay, this is why they got in. 4th best strength of schedule. And they went 7-8 in quad 1. That's not terrible. And then it's the same thing with, Georgia hosting over Oklahoma. Oh, their RPI is better. Oh, the KPI is better. It's like, well, their non-conference strength schedule is not, and you just said JMU got in because they had the 4th best non-conference strength schedule. So it's like, pick your poison, dude. Like, there's no consistency with the way these teams are weighted over another. It's like they just look for one reason in particular to say that for this particular choice, we use this metric to pick this team over this team, but with this other choice, we use this other metric, even though the metric we just used doesn't correlate with this new choice. And so that's what annoys me is like, I don't know how to pick these teams. It doesn't make any more sense, which is why I wonder, like, okay, so do you just get, if your team is a member on the committee, do you just get in? Like, is that it?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. And maybe there's more to this process, but the committee has not released what they do in full detail, and they're not going to. So it's confusing to me. It's very confusing, and I love a deeper explanation, and I don't think we got it yesterday. Watching their conversation with the chairman of the committee from Coastal Carolina, I didn't get anything from that conversation at all. Honestly, I just was like, okay, they have their reasonings to back up certain teams, but they're all different reasons. And when you bring up, oh well, this other reason you just used for this other team doesn't match up, they're like, yeah, but this other thing. Okay, like whatever. You have the teams you want to get in, and they got in. Great. Now I will say, I actually think all these teams that got in are deserving of getting in. I will say, like, these 64 teams, no one is in the field that I'm like,
Coastal Carolina, but again, committee presence.
Coastal Carolina, but like Shass, 36 RPI, 21 strength of schedule, number 6 non-conference strength of schedule, 19th KPI. I think that's in. I think that's good.
But what more does a team like Charleston have to do? The CAA regular season champ, among the first 4 out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Charleston, you go 41-14.
Yeah.
I understand you're not going to have your strength of schedule and your non-con strength schedule. Like, it's an uphill battle. Yeah. It's a fight you're never going to win. 117 and 195.
Yeah, you got to win the tournament. UNC Wilmington winning that tournament knocked them out.
You go 32-4 in quad 3 or worse. I mean, you beat everyone you're supposed to.
I'm with you.
Had 5 quad 1 opportunities all year.
I'm with you. I think they should be in, but you're not, with the metrics you have by playing in the 10th rated RPI conference in the country. You're not going to get in. 44 RPI, 117 strength of schedule, 195 non-con strength of schedule. Only played 5 Q1 games, 3-2, over 500. Good. RPI, KPI, 47. And here's where the DSR comes into play. You know what Charleston's DSR is, Shass? 25. 25. So DSR has them way in the field.
Yeah.
But that's not a metric that the committee is using yet. If they do, could have some different answers. Because JMU's DSR, 62. Just going to put that out there.
The Big Ten does get 2 additional teams in. Nebraska was the tournament champion. First time they've won that tournament. Indiana among the last 4 in, and then Illinois, regular season champ, they get in as well. So what did the Sun Belt end up getting in? Because Coastal's in, JMU's in, Southern Miss, Louisiana,
4, right?
Is it just 4? Okay.
Coastal, JMU, because Troy was in the last 4 out.
Yeah.
And Troy's metrics just they didn't hit. Non-conference rate schedule 235, KPI 58, RPI 59. Didn't hit. Same thing with Cal. Like people are saying, why didn't Cal get in? Well, Cal had an RPI in the 60s. KPI of 57, non-con strength schedule 208, strength schedule 119. The metrics don't hit. They did go 5-2 in Q1 though, so I will give Cal their flowers there. But when you play in the 6th best conference rated RPI in the Pac-12, which is gone basically, it's hard. It's an uphill battle, just like it was for College of Charleston. Like it's a tough hill to climb. You got to win your tournament.
All right, looking ahead to Friday, what's the juiciest regional that pops out to you? Maybe provides us with the best storylines you're most excited about, most toughest, most difficult, whatever. For me, it's Chapel Hill, LSU going to North Carolina, Fighting Tigers after the run in Hoover, appearing from 6 feet underground. In mid-April. In mid-April, they lost to Tennessee, got swept, and at that moment, they had just, I think, 22 wins, and they went on to win 18 of their next 23. They dropped the title game to Tennessee, but that Tennessee series defeat changed their entire season. They put it together with Gage Jump and Luke Holman, as you talked about. The offense, they have it there. They need the consistency at the back of the order. They need Jared Jones to not strike out every time he comes to the plate. Tommy White, his swing is so vicious. God, my body aches every time he swings the bat. But if they can play with the swagger and personality that we know that team has, and they can get contributions up and down the lineup, and the pitching can deliver, I think, North Carolina saw LSU appear and coming to Chapel Hill, and they're just like, and David Crane said it best when we were talking about it last week, they curdled up. It's just like, ugh, who did we hurt to have to get LSU, the reigning national champions, at our house in Chapel Hill? North Carolina had Arkansas a couple years ago, and Arkansas went there and took a super regional before going to Omaha, and now it's going to be LSU. In that fan base, they will travel. I'm sure they will have plenty to say about the confines of the Bosch and the folks of Chapel Hill, and they will take over. They will do their best to take over, and I think North Carolina is in for a rude awakening, man. I mean, it's a good year, kind of quietly under the radar. I mean, they just take care of business. Like, it's a good team. It is. I'm not trying to bash what they have. I mean, Honeycutt's one of the most electric players, in the country. They're the 4th overall seed. I mean, there's nothing really to pick apart. But LSU going there is a lot. And you get Wofford and Long Island there. I feel like the discrepancy in terms of North Carolina, LSU, and then the drop-off to those two in terms of the quality of the 3 and the 4 seed is very, like, there's a valley between those top 2 and bottom 2 in that regional site more than there is at any other region throughout the country.
There is, and here's the thing. I agree with you. This field favors the SEC, man. It really does. A&M hopping North Carolina to get the 3, which, again, deserving of a top 8 national, but I thought North Carolina would be the 3. A&M gets the 3 over North Carolina. You have LSU, a very tough 2 seed who just almost won the SEC tournament, going to North Carolina. Like, they drew the Tigers. Yikes. And then you look at Oklahoma State and Stillwater. They get Florida. I mean, okay, so here's my answer, by the way. And Georgia being a top 8 too. That also SEC favored. Which fine. SEC's best conference of college baseball. I get it. Like, they deserve their flowers. They're amazing. We just saw 17 incredible games. Well done, SEC. You got 11 teams in. Record. Good for you. Okay. First off, LSU, North Carolina. LSU has never played in a regional in an Eastern time zone. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yep. From Lenny Van Gilder, one of the beat writers in New Orleans. Never played in the Eastern time zone. Regional. Intriguing storylines galore. The Clemson regional. Clemson, Vanderbilt, Coastal Carolina, High Point, Tim Corbin, very close with Gary Gilmore, who gets in the swan song season. Apparently, Tim Corbin actually recorded a video for Gary Gilmore's retirement that was sent to him as a surprise. So a lot of storylines there between Vandy and Coastal.
And Corbin's career began, or at least really took off as an assistant under Jack Leggett at Clemson.
Correct. Yep, that was the other part. So that's an intriguing storyline perspective. Then I also want to point out the ECU-Tennessee matchup, because if Wake Forest ousts East Carolina and goes to Knoxville, guess who's going back to Knoxville?
Mr.
Chase
Burns.
Mother Burns. Like, Chase Burns is mother. Like, okay, we must all bow down to the lore of Chase Burns. He was insane. Clear-cut ACC Pitcher of the Year. 6-time ACC Pitcher of the Week. The guy struck out 15 strikeouts, or 14, 15 guys seemingly every start. Insanity for Chase Burns. So I want that. I will pick Wake to beat ECU just solely so I can see that. I have not done my picks yet for the D1 Baseball Bracket Challenge, which we will do. There will be a prize. We do it every year. We encourage you to submit. Whatever one of Shas's friends won last year, please, we'll set up a group. We'll send it out on Thursday. Hop in. It'll be great. I will pick Wake Forest to win the Greenville Regional just so I can see Chase Burns go back to Tennessee. Give me the storylines. The toughest regional, in my opinion, there are 3 that I want to watch out for, but the toughest one has to be the Stillwater Regional. Oklahoma State winning the Big 12 tournament, getting in as a host because they won the Big 12 tournament, in my opinion. Nebraska winning the Big 10. Florida, who people are saying shouldn't even be in the tournament. This is Ole Miss Part 2. Florida, the last team in, just barely grazes the field. I could totally see them putting it all together, pitching coming together, just like it happened for Ole Miss and Hunter Elliott and company, and winning the national title. They were just there. Like they have so many guys on this team that were in the field. I get it. They're hurt. Hayden Yost, Ty Evans, dinged up. Their pitching has not been great. I could see it. I could see it, man. They got it. All they need to do is get in. Anything can happen over the next month. This could be Ole Miss Part 2 for second time in 3 years. And Niagara, who won their conference tournament as well. So that's really tough. Secondarily, Norman, I already mentioned it. Duke, winner of the ACC tournament. Oral Roberts, winner of the Summit League. UConn, number 1 team of the Big East. Didn't win the Big East tournament, but that's a 4-team round robin that just whatever. Throw that out the window. And it was ravaged by rain. My third toughest, Tucson. Arizona, winners of the Pac-12 in its final swan song. Dallas Baptist, winner of Conference USA. Grand Canyon, regular season WAC champions, not tournament champions. Tarleton State beat them in the final, but Tarleton State's in its final year of ineligibility as they transfer from D2 to D1, so they're ineligible for the NCAA tournament. So Grand Canyon, as the regular season champs, gets the bid, and people are saying, oh, they don't deserve it. So they're frothing at the bit. And then West Virginia, Randy Mazey's final year, they boot him all the way to the West Coast. Look out, man. J.J. Weatherholt on another level. Derek Clark, we've talked about him. Aiden Major, if he can put it together on the mound. They have a really solid back end of the bullpen. They can hit like crazy. That's a beast of a regional right there.
And it's paired up with Chapel Hill, which I expect LSU to come out of. And if Arizona holds serve, if they're able to hold off Randy Mazey and DBU and Grand Canyon, you get Jay Johnson returning to Tucson, which
I forgot about that.
Is what I was projecting when we last podcasted as well, when we were trying to come up with a bracket. I thought that was a juicy little nugget with LSU and Jay Johnson's return to Arizona, where he was previously. Took the Wildcats to the College World Series a couple of times. So let me give you a couple of dudes. How about that?
Yeah, let's roll on to the dudes. We got a lot to talk about. We will dive deeper into these matchups, by the way. On Thursday, we're hoping to get a guest as well. And then we've got regional weekend coverage for you all weekend, guys. 3 to 11 p.m. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Eastern, by the way. I know that all over the country, time zones are going to throw you crazy. Eastern, 3 to 11, me, Shass, Gabe, Roper, Courts, boom, in your face.
2-man shifts. Somebody will run.
Yeah.
2-man shifts. Someone will be on the board punching the buttons. The other will be hosting and filling in the blanks, as we jump from broadcast to broadcast across the country for all 16 of these regional sites, and the games again beginning Friday through Monday if necessary. Cole Messina, 9 hits, 16 RBIs, 4 home runs, including a grand slam in Hoover. He is my bona fide dude of the week. He is not a human. He is just an amazing performance from him. And Hoover Hyzak as well. Connor Hyzak from Mississippi State, who returned from injury on Tuesday, had a 2-run walk-off home run against Ole Miss and a 2-1 win in a 2-hour and 10-minute ball game that went 9 innings, and Hyzak walked it off with a 2-run bomb, and then also provided the go-ahead hit in a tied game at 3 against Texas A&M on Wednesday in the top of the 9th inning. Kept an inning going late, too, in Thursday's action. He was very clutch. Certainly the glue for that team. I think it's very evident. A guy, I think, from Maine or New Hampshire, from the Northeast, too, that has found his way through the transfer portal down to Mississippi State. So really fun story tracking him. So those would be my 2 dudes, both from Hoover. Phenomenal players, phenomenal effort all around in the most clutch situations.
You already know where I'm going. My wave. Jackson Lynn, which that is the name of my firstborn son, by the way. That's it. Jackson Lynn, locked in. Sorry, future wife. Jackson
First name
Lynn.
Jackson Lynn.
No, middle name Lynn.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Jackson Lynn Kahn. That's it. Done. Locked in.
Pros
Jackson
and cons.
Lynn. Yes. New segment coming up on CSN. Yeah, Dugouts, Dumbbells, and Dingers. Gabe actually mentioned it in the one game that we called together. He's like, oh, we got to do pros and cons, and he never brought it up. All right, whatever. Anyways, Jackson Lynn. Last 12 games for Jackson Lynn. 9 home runs in his last 47 at-bats. After his first 42 games, he only hit 7. He hit the walk-off home run in Clearwater to send Tulane to back-to-back American Athletic Conference championships, tournament championships. Boom. Let's go. Roll wave. Back to the postseason. Have fun in Corvallis, Corey Glore. We love you. And you get Nichols, your regional rival. So Tulane wins the AAC tournament again. Jackson Lynn is the star. His first 42 games, by the way, 7 home runs. Last 12, 9. His second multi-homer game in 2 weeks. His other against ECU in New Orleans, by the way. He's my dude of the week. He's my dude of forever, and he will be the name of my firstborn child in honor of the great Jackson Lynn. 5 homers in that game as the Green Wave beats Wichita State. Let's go. We own Clearwater, baby.
I'm very happy for you. Hopefully Trey Yesavage is okay. He had a collapsed lung, the ECU star pitcher, and projected top 15 overall draft pick, did not throw last week. So Cliff Godwin says he will be healthy for regional play starting this weekend. They're going to need him. Imagine Trey Yesavage against Chase Burns. If those two hook up, if that's how the pitching could shake out, because now we're dealing with questions. We'll get more into it Thursday, Con, when we dig a little bit more deeply. But are these guys going to throw out aces in their first game against, inferior competition? So we'll wait and see how that plays out. On the way out, you want to provide a hat tip to Birmingham Southern. And then also we lost someone else that we do want to, give kudos to, who certainly had a big impact on our building and our company in a variety of different ways, for one school in particular, here under the Learfield umbrella a time or two ago.
Yeah, so on a positive note, Birmingham Southern College. If you haven't heard about him yet, you're living under a rock. What are you doing? Wake up. Search Birmingham Southern College baseball, because it was announced earlier this year that Birmingham Southern College in general, and David Crane detailed this perfectly during our championship game on the SEC radio network, the college is closing its doors on Friday, May 31st. They're shutting the doors. The baseball team, though, is still in the postseason, and they've been fighting. They won a regional. They went to a super regional. They won the super. And they're going to the D3 College World Series, which starts on the same day that their school is closing for good. So they're going to play with a school that no longer exists starting on Friday. And the kicker is they won the regional the morning that they had 9 players wake up with food poisoning. One had to go to the hospital via an ambulance, and the rest of the team needed IVs just to be able to play. And they won and are going to the D3 College World Series. So a hat tip of all hat tips to Birmingham Southern College. I hope you win the whole goddamn thing.
Incredible. Incredible. Miller Pope, longtime Georgia Tech engineer, unexpectedly passed away. We saw news Monday, Memorial Day. So I was talking with former Georgia Tech producer host Dan Corse, who will be on our regional coverage this weekend. He used to work with Miller for a handful of years or more before Georgia Tech left our building, if you will, to seek broadcast assistance elsewhere. But Miller Pope, still awesome dude. Doesn't take anything away from him. His life's super genuine. I know a lot of the engineers. He was an engineer. A lot of the engineers we work with still in our schools and, ACC tournaments, get-togethers, what have you. These people always think so highly and respect, what Miller Pope was, what he represented, and was just a super nice guy. Like didn't have any enemies. So thinking of him and his family.
Absolutely. Nearly 30 years working with both the Atlanta Falcons radio network and the Georgia Tech radio network. Very sad loss. Believe he was in his late 60s. And just, he was such a nice guy. Never a bad word said about him among our building. Very, very tough news for sure. Especially for those who worked closely with him in our building. Thinking of Courts, Mike Coulter, Cabell Philpott, among others, that Stephen Hartzell, that worked with him, that I certainly are feeling this. And we certainly are thinking of him and his family. I want to end on a positive note. I want to give a shout out to the 8-team Women's College World Series field that is now set. Surprise, not surprise. Oklahoma is in. UCLA in. OK State in. Florida Gators in. Duke in. Alabama in. Texas in. Stanford in. So we get 3 Big 12, 2 SEC, 2 Pac-12, and an ACC. Give me Oklahoma.
I picked Oklahoma at the start, man. I'm not veering off of that. So that'll do it for Dugouts, Dumbbells, and Dingers. Will be back on Thursday. Kahn has to go write some tickets for a police officer who is inexplicably wearing pants in hot weather. So we will unfurl that one when we return on Thursday. Again, check out baseballbarbecue.com, at baseball_barbecue on Instagram, at baseball_barbecue on TikTok, baseball BBQ on Twitter or X, and at Baseball Barbecue on Facebook. Will be more information on them, hats, t-shirts, swag, but more importantly, patented, fun, and functional baseball bat handle barbecue tools. So checking them out for the grilling season. Father's Day is coming in fast and hard. So D3 boys are back on Thursday. Until then, bye.